Welcome to the Flynn Brothers podcast. I'm John.
And I'm Jimmy. Today's big idea: squatters live rent-free inside our heads.
We talk about the A&E reality show Squatters and why it's one of the most addicting programs on television.
Later, we discuss the pros and cons of squatting and what the issue says about American society.
Finally, we role play as homeowner and squatter in a battle of wits to see who takes control of an imaginary property.
It's all coming up. But first, here's the Solons.
Uh-huh. Oh yeah. 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 Uh-huh. Oh yeah.
America has its obsessions. About 10, 15 years ago, we were obsessed with frozen yogurt. You remember that? All those frozen yogurt shops popping up. Pinkberry, all that. After that, it was cupcakes. Remember, we had that big cupcake phase, all these cupcake stores. Yeah. But it's not just food, right? We have these obsessions. Recently, the World Cup, right? America got really swept up in the World Cup. Every 4 years, the presidential elections, we get really swept up in that. We've been obsessed with the movie Obsession, ironically, right? Everyone's obsessed with the lead actress and that. But right now, America is in the midst of another obsession. America is in its squatter era. What is that? I sound modern saying that there.
Yeah,
We're in our squatter era. We are not squatting. So you're snapping for those who are watching on video. We're not that we're squatting on Earth necessarily, but we as a country in our media consumption are absolutely obsessed with squatters. Why do you think we are so fascinated by squatters and or squatting?
Well, if I were to be a little bit more serious than typical, I think it's because housing has never been more at a premium. And if you are lucky enough to have a house or own a house, and there is someone who is in that house who should not be there, and they are desecrating what is rightfully yours, well, it strikes a deep emotional chord.
It's good old-fashioned fear-mongering, baby. It's what Uncle Sam does best. And the thing that has fueled this squatting obsession, yes, there have been news stories. Yes, there have been these sort of viral videos shared. But it's really these two major television shows. And they both came out this year of our Lord 20 and 26. One of the shows is on Hulu. It's called, Will, you're going to have to bleep me here. It's called Squatters Get the Fuck Out of My House. Which is what everyone wants to say to a squatter, right? That's the hero sort of dream mythology we have in our heads.
Also, like a classic streaming title. Too long, and it has a swear word in it.
It's one of my I don't gets, restaurants that use dirty words that I don't like. Don't trust the bee in apartment 23. Squatters get the F out of my house. I don't like it. I watched this Hulu show. It's okay. Very, of this time, documentary style, in kind of all the ways these sort of Tiger King, Netflix, Hulu documentaries are. It's very good. However, there is a much superior squatting show on television. It is on the A&E network. No, I have not figured out what A&E stands for.
I think it's arts and entertainment.
Is it really?
Because
it basically is just lurid, awful fear-mongering and violence.
They've lost their way a bit. I think sort of like the History Channel used to be a bit more wholesome.
It's not really artistic. It is very entertaining, though. And this show that is on A&E is called Squatters. And, buddy, I am fully addicted to it. I forced you to watch a couple episodes with me. What did you think before we dive into the specifics?
Well, it is a very compelling show. You get to see a side of America that I would say is not typically shown. These are real people.
Yes.
Like they are, you are really getting uncut Americans. These are also not like reality show ready people in most circumstances. Certainly the squatters are not reality show ready.
They're not even sunlight ready.
Yeah.
I mean, they're hiding in these houses. They're squatting.
And the people who, need the squatters to get out, they're also like literally just kind of people at the end of their rope.
Yes,
where it's like,
yes.
it's incredible that the solution to their problem is I have to go on a reality show.
Yep. And they have to hire a man named Flash Shelton. That's right, folks. The star of the show Squatters, the squatter hunter himself, is named Flash Shelton. He has a gigantic goatee, not unlike Ulysses S. Grant or one of the presidents from the 1800s. And homeowners hire Flash Shelton to remove squatters from their properties, and that is the crux of this A&E show, Squatters. Flash Shelton has a very interesting backstory, which he tells us all of in the opening narration of every single episode. His mother was the victim of squatters, and we see a photo of Flash with a much shorter goatee pictured next to his mother, the elderly woman, and we feel very bad that obviously these people came into this old woman's home and we're probably treating it as their own, treating it very poorly, probably desecrating the place, and Flash got them out of there. And this is sort of his comic book origin story. It's a pretty interesting and compelling origin story for the entire series, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it lends for a man whose name is Flash Shelton, if that is his, God-given or mother-given Christian name, I'm not sure. But you would think he's a sort of cartoonish figure. He is surprisingly well-mannered and composed, even though he has the craziest job in the world.
And he puts himself in these very volatile, emotional situations. Folks, it is an awesome, awesome television show. I cannot recommend it enough. To be honest, I don't really know if A&E is still a channel on good old-fashioned cable or YouTube TV. I watch it via the Friendly app, which has Hallmark movies and all these lurid, awful shows on A&E about how awful human beings can be to each other.
This is
so Friendly app or wherever the hell you can find it.
This is a streaming service that I didn't know about until you told me it. I really thought we had reached peak streaming, but this is just something that's kind of in the shadows. Like, there's probably some people who watch nothing but the the channel.
And you'd probably think Friendly has vowels and is spelled the normal way. It's FRNDLY, and it's got that Hulu green, baby. You could almost mistake it as Hulu.
Friendly.
But every episode of Squatters is basically the same, which I think is a really true and good thing about any great television show. We've talked about this before. The promise of a pilot episode is that every episode of this show will be like the pilot. Just we change the ingredients around, but The Simpsons, Homer is gluttonous and a moron in every episode. Lisa judges her brother Bart for being an embarrassment and for being rebellious. Succession, the siblings don't get along. Walter White, he does some crazy, heightening, violent shit. Every single television show episode is the same, even if there is progress, right? And I think that is especially true of reality shows. You really want the same thing every time. Like when you go to In-N-Out, you want that same grilled onion taste. You want those fries. You want that soft drink. You want the patty. It's the same thing with reality shows, and that's why it's junk food television.
Well, I think we've also really gotten away from that format, the pilot being a replicable process. So much now is mini-series or longer shows where there is a huge arc of the characters. And season 2, for instance, like in Big Little Lies, is almost unrecognizable to season 1. There's these kind of big swings.
But I love Squatters. For those who have never seen an episode, fear not. You're listening to the Flynn Brothers podcast where your good buddy Jim's going to tell you exactly what happens in an episode of Squatters. And like I said, they're all the same, so this applies to all 16 episodes of the first season. So, step 1, Flash Shelton shows up in some city, and here's the sob story from the homeowner, right? A homeowner will sit him down. It's usually an individual or maybe like a husband and wife, and they say, we have this this property, and we're planning to move our family from California to Cleveland, and the house is in Cleveland, and we had a contractor over there to take a look at the house, see if we need to remodel anything, and they found a squatter there. Or we are tired of living in the city. We bought a house kind of in rural Washington, and we're going to go retire there, and my neighbor went to check the mail, and there's a squatter living there. Or, oh, somebody changed the locks, and I got a call from a neighbor, and they basically are just saying, they, like you alluded to earlier, they are in this horrible situation where there's nothing they can do. And the reason there's nothing they can do is because squatting is always a civil matter handled in civil court. If you call the police and someone is squatting in your house and they have attained squatters' rights, which you usually get in as little as like 30 days. If you're in a house for 30 days, you get squatters' rights, and the police can't come and just throw you out by your shirt collar and your belt buckle, right? You have some right. So you feel, though, very bad for these people. Like when you hear these sob stories, don't you feel pretty sympathetic?
Yes, in particular because the people who are squatting are not often the most sympathetic figures.
No, they and we'll get to this. There is this almost like feral nature to them, right? It's almost like if you were an abandoned pet, you would look for shelter and food wherever you could find it, right? And again, we'll get into this sort of the seriousness of this matter, but we'll keep it light for now and just keep talking about the Squatter TV show. So step one, after Flash hears the sob story, gives him a handkerchief to wipe their tears, he has the homeowner sign him to what is called a renovation lease. Now, this allows Flash tenant rights and the ability to modify the home, okay? So he can go in there. He's given a key by the owner. If they haven't changed the locks, he can enter, and he is basically allowed to now become a roommate of the squatter. And Flash's whole thing is, I'm going to out-squat the squatter, right? They want to leave this place dirty, I'll leave it dirtier. They want to play loud music, I'll play it louder. They want to control the thermostat, I'm going to crank it up to 90 degrees, right? And this is sort of how he operates, right? Because the law is such that, again, he can't just kick down the door, tase them, and throw them out on the lawn, right? There's due process. He has to go through kind of the red tape, and he has to go through it in a very legal manner, which I really admire, too. You know, you expect him to be this, like, hyper macho, hyper conservative, get off my property white guy, and he is very empathetic. He is very sympathetic. He's very well-read. He's very knowledgeable, and it really throws you for a loop when you watch the show.
Yeah, you're expecting to be like, oh, I'm not going to like Flash Shelton. And then almost immediately you fall in love with Flash Shelton. He has an encyclopedic knowledge of all the different squatters' rights and laws that go from each state. Yeah. You would think, you described him kind of playing the hardball with the squatters. Often, though, too, he's just looking for a solution.
Yes.
So if there's a way that he can get this squatter into another place or to another apartment, or there's somewhere else that he's going to go, he'll choose that route. He'll just choose whatever he thinks is going to be most effective.
One time, this guy had nowhere to go who was a squatter. He had signed an intent to leave, and Flash paid for a hotel for him for a week. And, Flash Shelton, pretty good dude. So anyway, once Flash acquires the renovation lease, he goes to the property to scope it out. And Flash, of course, is joined by his team. I'll break it down for you. He has a young African-American woman named Justice by his side. He refers to Justice as his sister, which looking at them, clearly are not related. There's probably a 30-year age gap, completely different race and appearance. I don't think he's making some hack joke that she's my quote-unquote sister or anything like that, right? It's a very confusing dynamic.
I think they're bonded by their mutual desire to see squatters evicted from places they're unlawfully occupying.
Could be. Flash's right-hand man is a fellow named Cam. He is a security expert. And then Flash sometimes will be joined by Michael, who is his son, who often will be like on Zoom, and Flash will ask him to do a background check of the squatter, but sometimes Michael will join on these missions as well. You may think to yourself, Jim, you use the word missions. That sounds a bit like law enforcement, military, special forces type stuff. That's exactly how Flash and his team are cosplaying. They wear black bulletproof vests that say squatter hunters on them. And they talk in that kind of police military jargon. They see things like move in, stand down. Why do you think they take this approach of appearing as though they are kind of police military security figures?
Well, it does give them a semblance of official seemingness, you know, like authority.
Yeah.
And I also think, you know, these are pretty intense. Like, you don't know what's waiting for you on the other side of the door. It's clearly a person who's pretty desperate if they're squatting. And you do have to approach this like something where, you know, they get into situations that could really go bad if they weren't careful or experienced. So I can see why, because, you know, you're basically, it's like infiltrating enemy territory.
People have brandished weapons at him. He'll often be approaching a house and tell his right-hand man Cam, he'll say, you know, be aware, body cam's on. We're in Ohio. It's an open carry state. It's a stand your ground state. So as they're approaching these houses, your heart's racing. You're like, am I going to see Flash gun down in a blaze of glory trying to kick someone out of a condo? Like, it really is a very intense show. And I mean, to be honest, like, you sympathize somewhat for the squatters, because the last thing you want when you are cozy at home is a camera crew and people with bulletproof vests coming in your door and calling you names and saying, you got to get out of here. But again, if you're a squatter, you're probably living your whole life looking over your shoulder, right?
Yeah. It's I would say they're not sympathetic figures, the squatters, but they are pitiable.
Yes, very
most
pitiable.
Of the time, yeah,
very pitiable. All right, so the team shows up at the house. Some dude, he's usually the same dude, and I always forget his name. But he's a drone operator, and that's usually the surveillance they do. They get a drone up in the air, they fly it around the house. Sometimes the squatters will like look out the window and be like, "Oh, this drone appears to be, you know, Flash Shelton must be in town." It's kind of a bat signal in a way, and he's looking for open doors, entrances. He's trying to figure out, you know, how many occupants, how many squatters are in the house, what the state of the house is, stuff like that. They will also maybe sometimes send in people undercover. Flash will go undercover as like a construction worker to kind of scope it out. They'll talk to the neighbors to post cameras in the neighbor's yard and kind of canvass the neighbors. Hey, have you heard anything about the people squatting in this house? Sometimes they'll post like eviction notices. They'll try to make contact with the squatters. They'll knock on the door. Normally, the squatters have changed the locks too, right? There is this very territorial nature once someone begins squatting in a home. And a lot of these people are what are known as serial squatters. They make a habit of this. There was one couple who had been doing it for like 30 years. They hadn't paid rent in 30 years, and they had been charged with crimes related to squatting and stuff like that. And it is just pretty incredible. And, you know, one of Flash's big missions is like, I just want state legislation to change. Like, I just want like this not to happen anymore, where people can like not, you know, just go squatting at other people's houses where they don't have a rightful lease. They're not rightful tenants. And it just kind of comes across as common sense and kind of a noble crusade, doesn't it?
Yeah, it seems like if everybody watched squatters, a politician could really make some hay out of, I'm going to change squatter law. I just think it's a pretty small issue that doesn't affect very many people. So
fear-mongering, right?
So
it's fear-mongering.
That's why, but when you said that there's a couple that's been getting away with this for 30 years, there has to be some sort of sick thrill to finding a new place to squat. No one's been here in weeks. Honey.
I'm taking a crap in some guy's house. I don't belong here.
Bring the air mattress in. Get the sleeping bags going. We're home. Get the hot plate plugged in.
The air mattress, that's when you're first moving in or you're just moving out, right? That's the air mattress for you. Like, they could use that slogan in their advertisements. Not that they need to advertise. Everyone's got an air mattress, right? Go. Someone's coming into town, you put them on an air mattress. Eventually, Flash and the team get into the house, and Flash kind of starts making himself at home. As I said, he'll crank up the thermostat, he'll play loud music, he'll have a megaphone, he'll outright call the squatters to their face. Talk about how they're ruining someone's life, and that is where he'll kind of become more empathetic and be like, you know, you got a young family. a couple kids under 3 who this is going to be their childhood home, and you're costing the homeowner thousands of dollars, and these kids can't change schools, and they can't do this, they can't do that, and you'll see. Sometimes the squatters will just kick and scream and get feral and say, get out of my house, which the level of delusion the squatters have to live in a house unlawfully and then yell, get out of my house, get out of my house. I mean, that is a level of mental gymnastics, and it probably just comes from a lack of education. It's probably this like finders keepers mentality.
Yeah.
It's just like a sickness of the brain, isn't it? Look at me. I'm a politician going on the squatter train.
I do think they actually think it is their place. I mean, shoot, if you'd been living there for a while, and you've probably also told a bunch of people by now, this is my place. Maybe you've had people over. Maybe people have come to the house and you're saying, this is my place. Also, though, too, the audience is just so on the side of Flash and the aggrieved homeowner that when the squatter says, this is my place, there's just this visceral audience reaction of like, no, it's not. You get out of there.
Well, you want part of you. There's this sick reptile brain urge, like, come on, Flash, just crack their skull, put them in cuffs, and get them out of there. But of course, that's not how it works, right? And even sometimes, you want to talk delusional mindset of these squatters. The squatters will call the cops on Flash, and Flash will present legal documents, and he'll even be there sometimes with the homeowner who will present the deed to the house. And oftentimes the squatters will present like a faulty lease or something like that. But then again, the police are like, well, they have a faulty lease and bullshit paperwork, but they do have squatter rights. They've proved they've been there for more than 30 days. So unfortunately, it's a civil matter. And it's really just crap because these people then the civil cases take over a year. So it's like you could have someone living in your house, crapping in your toilet, letting the water leak from under your sink in the kitchen, cranking up the AC, costing all this money, and then they're just not like gonna suffer for over a year. And it just to me is really, really wrong. And when you watch the show, it's funny how they've made squatting kind of a political issue, right? The conservatives anti-squatter, the liberals discussing the housing situation, saying that you should have tenant rights and stuff like that. It's really not a political issue, though. I don't find. I just think it's like something where there's obviously a difference between like I pay rent. My landlord is not allowed to kick me out just because I played music loud one time, versus I left town for 2 weeks and this guy is now living in my house and changed the locks and I can't get in, and another 2 weeks passed and it's been 30 days and now my kids don't have a place to live and we're living out of a hotel because this disturbed individuals living in my rightful house.
Yeah, it's a separate matter. It doesn't really fit neatly onto the spectrum of political issues these days. And again, I just think it's enough content and enough situations to feed a reality show without necessarily becoming a nationwide movement.
Yeah. Flash, though, eventually, as he's trying to out-squat the squatter, he digs his heels in. He sets up cameras. He tries to figure out things about the squatter. Like one woman who was squatting, he had learned had a fear of snakes. So he calls in a woman to be like, I'm building a reptile enclosure in the house. And she has this giant snake, and the woman starts freaking out. And oftentimes the squatters, again, like a cornered animal, really, will just retreat into their room and hole up and lock the door and call the police and swear at them and just get totally defensive. And then eventually, after a day or two, they basically break down. They will sign an intent to evacuate in 48 hours. And it tends to work out. Flash pretty much in all the episodes I've seen gets the squatters out. I think there was one episode where it was prolonged a little extra time, but eventually the situation worked out. And like the people who'd been squatting for 9 months paid the back rent and then just kept being the tenant and started paying like new rent. And it was just like, okay, well, it's like situation solved. All I wanted was rent money, and now they're paying rent money.
He's almost... What he is he is an exorcist for living ghosts. A squatter is a living ghost. It is a spirit that is occupying your domicile and making life intolerable for you. And so you bring in this man who has the secret to get them out.
I do not mean this at all in a genocidal sense, but he basically is a human exterminator.
Oh, God.
Like, I hate to say that.
Well,
but
he doesn't
like,
kill him, but he gets him out.
Yes, he exactly, right? He again, Exorcist is maybe better. Both of these are not exactly flattering depictions of how to treat a human being as a devilish ghost or as a pest, but right, that is basically what he is. The funny thing about Justice, his quote-unquote sister, is sometimes Flash will push too hard, or the people in the house will be reticent to talk to and trust that old white guy. So Justice will kind of sidle up and sort of be like, hey, like, let's have a heart-to-heart. Let's talk this out. And Flash will kind of stand back, and Justice will kind of convince these people. She's got that soft, feminine touch. She can usually get them to sign the intent to leave. So everyone's really got their role, right? He's got his son doing the background checks. Justice is kind of the break glass in case of emergency negotiator. Cam, the right-hand man, he needs a little extra muscle. And then Flash, he's Flash Gordon, isn't he? He's the star, right?
Yeah, a little good cop, bad cop action he likes deploying.
Exactly. So once the squatter leaves, Flash lets the homeowner back into their house, and then he just moves on to the next city and the next mission. And it is beyond satisfying as a show. At the end of every episode, I feel like a weight is lifted off my back. These people can continue with their lives. They can move back to their condo in Philadelphia that they weren't allowed to live in because there was a squatter there for 9 months. And we'll talk about this after the break. Really what the show brings up, and this whole obsession with squatters, what it brings up is it's a very two-sided issue, and it really does expose these imbalances in our society, both for the property owners and for people who can't afford housing.
Yeah. I mean, it's an issue that wouldn't exist if there weren't enough places for everybody to live.
Thank God A&E is doing the good, strong journalistic work to expose the evils of American society, and we'll continue chatting about it after the break. You alluded to this earlier, that you didn't really think that squatting was necessarily this endemic issue in the United States. And you are true to a certain extent. However, there really is not a lot of hard statistical data regarding the prevalence of squatting in America. Because it's handled by civil court, we don't have all these crime statistics that we would have like in a crime database. And I know our audience members are probably a little let down by this. We're known here on the Flynn Brothers podcast, hard, fast statistics, right? It's numbers. A hall, numbers, right? We're numbers guys, right? Why was 6 afraid of 7? There we go. God, I blew it. Why'd the chicken cross the what the hell's that joke? But essentially all our knowledge of squatting and squatter issues are rooted in these television shows and these viral videos, and it maybe does skew things a certain way and maybe makes the issue a little more impassioned than perhaps it should be. And legislation is slowly getting changed as a result of these television shows and these viral videos. But I want to kind of do a pro and anti-squatter sort of just look at the facts of both sides of the issue as dispassionately as we can. And I know that's difficult because God, that show Squatters gets my heart racing and gets me passionate, but I'm going to try to be dispassionate. You kind of keep me in check here. We'll start by going anti-squatter. Look, I'm getting emotional again. I'm doing the anti-view. What's wrong with me? But anti-squatter, here's the argument against squatting. And you alluded to this as the first thing you said when I asked you about it. It is very violating to have a stranger live in your home. I think everyone would agree with that, right? Your home is your sanctuary. It is your safe space. I think it's really, like, isn't it kind of one of everyone's biggest fears is someone breaking into your house or like taking possession of something you own?
Oh, yeah. I mean, deep in your soul, unless live in a new construction place, other people have been here.
Right.
But you're able to block that out when
Right.
you occupy a space. I live in a 100-year-old apartment building. I can't even imagine how many different people have been in this room and have done all manner of crazy and likely disgusting things. But I can block that out of my head when I'm here and it's clean and it's just me. Whereas with the squatters, and even it's sort of similar to, I had my house broken in and people stole from it. And there is this just like incredibly unsettling feeling of somebody who I didn't want to be in here was in here.
And this is an overused word, but it does create trauma, right? It creates the fear that it could happen again. It creates fear of the unknown, that you don't know what they did when they were in here, or sort of what the situation that got them here in the first place. What if they're going to, take revenge on you for kicking them out or getting rid of them? It's very, very unsettling. Another big issue is it costs these innocent homeowners a lot of not only emotional stress, but also financial stress. And I know it's a big talking point to be anti-landlord and to say all property owners are evil, but it's not true. Like, a lot of property owners are people who worked hard and saved and bought a house or bought a condo or bought a building, or they inherited it from their mom or dad or grandpa, and they maybe have a lot of family memories in this home. And these are just innocent people. It's not like these squatters are targeting, like, here's the most evil landlord who neglects their tenants, and I'm going to move into one of their apartments, and I'll show them by not paying rent. It's mostly just very innocent, middle-class, hardworking people. And oftentimes, I think Americans really empathize with that, and they really hate seeing those people get screwed, right? We in America, like, we're okay screwing over rich people, and a lot of people in America are okay ignoring when poor and low income people get screwed. But there is something very American about, hey, don't screw a working class hero.
It's the American dream to be a middle class, at least, person with a home that you own.
Yeah.
And I think that's what really is attacked by the squatters here. And, as much as you say, there's this anti-landlord, person who is leasing something to somebody else. I mean, just going in somewhere and desecrating a property because there isn't anyone there. There's nothing noble about what the squatters are doing. There's no larger purpose.
And these squatters, as we see on the show, as we see in other media, they're happy to live in squalor, right? There's something about these SQA words that just overlap. They don't fix leaks. There's some of the houses on the show. There was one, I think, in Philadelphia where there was a huge leak in the roof and water dripped onto the floor and then froze into ice, and then would melt during the day, freeze back into ice at night. And the whole floor was covered in black mold and was spongy. And it's a total teardown. And it's like, it was like a guy who, this was his home that he was planning to move his family into, and it's like, it's probably going to cost him $250,000 and endless hours of work to fix it. And the guy was probably in his 60s. The guy, and it's just like, this guy only has one life, and he has to dedicate all this money he's saved, all this time he may never get back. He definitely won't ever get back, undoing the damage from a very negligent individual. And that, again, it just doesn't sit well.
Yeah. And there's also, they're using these places like a rented mule, this lack of care for the property. Yeah. And I think that's it too, where you see the squatters, it's like, oh, man, this place could be so nice if somebody was taking care of it, if somebody fixed it up. But instead they're treating it like a hermit crab treats a shell. And once the shell, you've gotten all your use out of it, you move on to another one.
They may feel, as squatters, society has dehumanized me by not giving me housing, but you're dehumanizing the property owner by not respecting them or any of their belongings in a way. There's kind of this pattern of bad behavior, right? It also, like, not only does it affect the individual property, it affects the neighborhood as well, right? The squalor conditions that the squatters live in can attract pests. It can, if they have just trash on the lawn and trash the place, it can lower property values. Like, again, this may seem like small potatoes in regards to like, well, this squatter needs a place to live. Like, what's more important, property values or an individual having somewhere to live? And I understand that argument, but it's like, again, it's the selfishness that affects more than just the people who are losing their property.
I think in the abstract, it's easier to sympathize with the squatters. I think it's easier to say, like, these are people who, in most cases, society has more or less abandoned them or ignored them or not met their needs or not provided them what they perhaps deserve to have as a human being with dignity. Now, how do they get that back? It's difficult to foist the inability of society to care for somebody onto one person in particular who has to bear the entire weight of this person who has nowhere else to go, maybe, or maybe they're just taking advantage of a situation where they know there's legal loopholes that they can hide behind. So I think that's where the sort of transition from the abstract of sympathy in a time when there's a lot of housing insecurity and there aren't enough homes for people, and most people our age won't be able to buy a house, they say, versus, well, you can't just take another person's house.
Yeah, well said. Let's go to the pro squatter argument. We've continually hit on this. We are in the midst of a housing crisis. There are empty homes. There are too many homeless. And again, I think most people would agree. I know you would agree. Like water, like food, housing is a basic human right. And I think that is really why there are so many squatters is there are just, it's that old ethical dilemma. It's not right to steal, but if your family is starving, it is ethical to steal a loaf of bread to prevent your family from starving. And so maybe this is just that conundrum where it's like, okay, housing is a basic human right. I cannot afford a house. If you look in Los Angeles, the cheapest apartment you're going to find, even a studio, is probably $1,500. And so if you cannot afford $1,500 a month, you cannot live in Los Angeles, which means you're probably going to be living out of your car, or you're going to be living out of a tent, or you're going to be homeless. And the fact that there is no kind of spectrum of poverty, there's no kind of affordable housing, anything like this, it really. Of course, if this is the society we have, we are going to have issues like squatting.
Yeah, and there just isn't that in-between area. And I think we've kind of reached a stage in American society where there's a certain standard of living that we deem as minimally acceptable. Because in other countries, there are forms of housing that are not exactly desirable. You can think of like the favelas in Brazil, where they're basically like corrugated tin homes that, you don't have maybe running water or something like that, but there's at least an organization, there's an area where it exists, there's some level of law and order that exists there, even if it's not in anything that we would consider of an acceptable standard in America. That, I think, is what the problem is. It's either just complete and utter abandonment by society, getting moved around by police as you're seeking a place to live, or you're traveling around trying to find somewhere to be, versus like being housed. And I think that's the difficulty of it.
And I think there are plenty of scenarios where quote unquote squatters should have tenant rights. Let's, for example, say you are a daughter or granddaughter and you are living with a parent or grandparent who is very elderly, and you're caretaking for them, and they have dementia, right? Or you could even be a friend of this person, you're caretaking for them. And let's say you've been with them for 6 months to a year, feeding them, bathing them, doing all this nice things for them. And then out of nowhere, this person with dementia who's not in their right mind calls the police and says, there's a stranger in my house, get them out of here. It would not be right for the police to come and kick you out of the house, even though you've been caretaking for this person, right? Or like I said, your landlord should not be able to throw you out if you've been paying rent and if you have been a good tenant just because, I don't know, you smoked indoors one time or right, you played music too loud or something like that, right? There should be these protections. I think where it gets out of hand is when the police show up and it's like, hi, I'm the property owner. Here's the deed to my house. That guy is a squatter who changed the locks and he just gave you a forged lease. That is a situation where I feel like the police would be able to make a judgment call, but then again, you open yourself up to liability. If you accidentally make the wrong call, then you as a police department are going to get sued. And I think from the police's point of view, it's probably just easier wash our hands of it civil court.
Honestly, as much as Flash Shelton is pushing for legislation and all of these different things, I actually kind of think Flash Sheltons are the answer to this situation.
Yes.
I kind of think the police, it's just too much of a, like, who is telling the truth? Can we figure this out? Maybe we even make the situation worse by pulling out somebody that we shouldn't, or taking a side that we shouldn't because we don't have all the facts and we're just coming on the scene late. This is actually one of those things where this sort of ad hoc, like, let's send in the expert type of thing, I think actually makes sense.
And, you know, we can get to that as kind of one of the solutions. Later, we'll talk about solutions. A few more things on kind of the pro-squatter arguments. The biggest thing that occurs to me when I'm watching squatters is if these squatters are getting 30 days into a residence without being checked on, that means you're leaving your residence alone for 30 days, which begs the question, why are these residences being left alone for 30 days? You don't have a neighbor to come by and check the mail. You don't have a relative who can swing by once a week. You yourself are not coming by. That, to me, comes across as negligent, right? Now, is 30 days too small an amount of time? I would argue that's probably true. I would argue to get true squatters' rights, you'd probably need to be in there like 3 months versus like barely 1 month. I mean, we could haggle on the number of days, but that to me is a little negligent from the property owners where they are not checking in on their residents regularly. I get it. If you live out of the city, that's fine. You need, as an owner of something, right? If I own a car, I'm not going to go 2 weeks leaving my car on the street and then, oh my God, my catalytic converter got stolen and someone smashed in my windshield. It's like you left your car alone for 2 weeks. You didn't move it once. It was collecting dust. Someone wrote "wash me" on the back window in the filth. You know what I mean? It's like if you have property, you need to check in on it and take care of it and be vigilant about it, right?
Yeah, I think that's just, you're being kind of, naive to not think that there's a certain set of circumstances that might compel somebody to take advantage of this situation. And I think I can also see from the squatter point of view that there's like, well, this is that person's second house, or, well, they do have somewhere that they're living, or these people could afford to live somewhere else. But I think the problem is like, what if everybody did that?
Yes,
like you can't expand the sort of squatter logic to everybody where it's just like, well, I'm going in here. And I think, if we want to talk about, there should be a larger distribution of, is it right that there are empty apartments that are luxury properties that people can't afford yet in a neighborhood as they wait for it to gentrify? Well, there's people sleeping outside in that same neighborhood. That's a conversation to have. That's a conversation to say, maybe there should be more affordable housing. And I think that's not even a should. Like, there must be more affordable housing to kind of meet the moment here. But at the same time, you can't just take another person's place, even if they have a surplus and you don't. This is, somebody else could have that place who would live within the law.
The last pro-squatter argument is being in favor of due process. And just in the moment, if paperwork is presented to the police, it's very difficult. It's he said, she said, right? It's a lot of hearsay. There is no way for the police in the moment to be able to evaluate the evidence as well as a court would be able to, which brings us to some possible solutions. I do think you were totally correct in saying this Flash Shelton, maybe it's a subdivision of the police department. Maybe it's some separate local government agency. I don't think they should be called squatter hunters and necessarily have bulletproof vests.
And I also think that, like, Flash is calling himself a squatter hunter is good for TV. It's not exactly what he is. I mean, he's not bagging and tagging these guys. He's just getting them out of the place and deploying a variety of means. And most of the time, he's not being violent. He doesn't carry like a gun, or he never pulls a gun on him or anything.
He doesn't even carry a gun.
Yeah.
No, he doesn't even carry a gun.
So I think, I almost think like every county should have 2 squatter specialists.
It really, and on the flip side, you need to get people out of homes, sure. You also need a division to get people into homes, right? People who, unhoused homeless people who want to be put into homes, right? There's certainly examples of homeless people who do not want to be housed, right? Who enjoy the freedom of not paying taxes and living outdoors, and there are a handful of people who whether they're addicted to drugs, mentally ill, there are some people who just are not interested or unwilling to be moved indoors,
right? Or they've just grown accustomed to it. They've been they grew up as a foster youth, and they've never really had this sort of thing, and the only community that they've ever known are these types of people. But at the same time, we live in a society, and there are certain sort of rules and expectations that we have for citizens in a society.
I think the other solution is you need to speed up the due process. And I think having these dedicated units would help do that, where you could have people show up on site, analyze the documents, and make it so these homeowners don't have to pay attorney fees and be wrapped up in a year with civil court. You want this to happen quicker, to speed up this process. And I think on the flip side, you need to make it harder for people to obtain squatter rights, or just need to be more detailed in the language to obtain squatter rights, right? If you are a relative or have some type of connection to the homeowner, that's one thing. But if you were just a random person the homeowner has never met, never vouched for, never given any type of verbal or written permission to be in the house, then that to me just seems very, very unacceptable.
Yeah. I think having some sort of on-site arbitration almost would be a valuable thing.
Another thing that occurs to me, and I'm curious what you think of this, to put yourself in the mind of a squatter, these people will live in places full of trash with black mold, places that are very bad for not only their hygiene, but their physical, emotional health. Why would you want to live in such conditions? Is it you're just completely desperate? Is it it's what you're used to? Is it kind of just you're not you kind of lack the sort of get up and go self-respect to maintain a clean house? What do you think it is?
I think it is desperation, and I also think you and I aren't exactly handy fellas. I think there are just a lot of things that go wrong in a house that you could be like, oh, that's not that bad. And then day after day after day, it gets worse and worse and worse. And you have no idea how to solve it. You don't have the money to solve it. You can't call somebody over to the place to solve it, because then they're like, oh, you live here, huh? And then you're drawing attention to it. So I think that's kind of how it happens.
Just desperation and
a lack of ability to fix something because you're in this weird legal loophole gray zone.
And probably thinking the jig's going to be up in 6 months. I'm a serial squatter. I've done this once. Maybe I can get 6 months out of this, and then I'll blow town and try to find another place to live. So maybe they do kind of view it as enjoy it while you can, right? Okay, this brings us to our final game. We are going to play homeowner versus squatter. This is a game I just invented. We are going to play it sort of Dungeons and Dragons style, where we'll be role-playing as either the homeowner or the squatter. I'll even let you pick, buddy. And basically what you do is you make a choice, and then I counter your choice with a choice of my own. So it's like chess in that way. We'll kind of take turns. And again, as the homeowner or squatter, if we'll kind of set the parameters of what sort of the property is like, and then if you're the squatter or the homeowner, we'll kind of make decisions on here's how I'm going to live. Are you going to hire Flash Shelton? Oh, he's going to come do this. Well, I'm going to do that. And we're going to see who taps out first, and we will at the end declare who wins and who controls the property, the squatter or the homeowner. How does that sound, buddy? Does this make sense to you?
Yeah,
okay,
I understand.
Good. And we're just ourselves. ourselves in this.
Right.
You're John Flynn owning or squatting. I'm Jim Flynn owning or squatting.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you like to be the homeowner or the squatter?
I feel like you have seen so many more episodes of it that I will be the squatter. I'll try to feel my way through it. I'll let you be sort of, I'm assuming Flash Shelton is going to enter the picture, and or you will be deploying the tactics you've seen Flash.
Okay. Squatter, how did you get into my house?
Let's see. How about I'm walking around. I'm a guy who rings doorbells, tries knobs,
Checks Amazon packages.
Checks Amazon packages wherever they're piling up. And I see you've got a nice little condo here.
Okay.
Boy, no one really comes by. I don't ever see any lights on in here. Oh, I just saw a guy go up to the place. There's a window open here. An electricity man. He just left.
Electrician, you might say, not an electricity man. Yeah.
I'm gonna slip in here. I got my gear, and I'm in the master bedroom.
Okay. You're in the master bedroom. Okay. I am coming by to check on my condo, and I walk into the condo and see that you're in there, and I say, as the title of the other television show goes, "Squatter, get the fuck out of my house."
This is my house, sir. What are you talking about? I live here. I've been living here for more than 30 days.
Great. Yeah, that's good. That's a good thing to establish. I came 30 days after. Good. Stipulated. I'll accept it. I don't care. I own this house. I'm going to move in here with my fiance. We're getting married. You're taking a home away from a good fiance, buddy. You need to hit the bricks.
Hey, I got nowhere else to go. This is where I am. I got rights. Too bad there's nobody who could possibly help you escape this situation.
I'm not going to call in Flash yet. I probably am going to go ahead and turn off all the cameras I got in my house, make sure you're not recording me, and I'm probably going to threaten you to get out of my house or else.
Oh boy. Well, then I'm gonna call the police. This man is threatening me in my own home.
All right,
I live here. Here's my faulty lease.
Okay, the police come by. They take me out.
Yeah.
I'm pissed. Beep boop 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 boop. A&E squatter hotline. How can I help you? Hi, I got a mission for Flash Shelton. Him and Justice and Cam fly out. I say, there's this bum. He looks a little like me, and he's been living in my condo. A lot of time's passed now. It's been about 3.5 months. They say, okay, we'll case the joint. I need you to sign a renovation lease. I signed the renovation lease, and he's going to start moving in. So Flash comes by, and he starts flying the drone. He's flying the drone around the house. What's he seeing as he's flying that drone around the house?
He's seeing me scurrying around. I'm looking out the windows up at him. I can hear the whining. I'm like, God, I hope he didn't call Flash Shelton. I've seen his show.
You can hear.
I'm shutting blinds. I'm locking doors, locking windows, making sure there's no way for him to kind of get in here.
I'm saying, Flash, let's just bum rush him and tear down the door. I run at the door and break it down. I say, squatter, get the fuck out of my house. Get out of here. Get out of here. Flash pulls me back. He says, this is not how we do things in the state of California. We got to regroup. He uses words like regroup. Remember, he's kind of military cosplay.
He's not a man who rushes into action. He has a plan.
Okay, boarded up windows, boarded up doors. Okay, I think what I would have... okay, I'm going to suggest to Flash, there's some neighbors around here who I'm good friends with who knew me before this damn dirty squatter came in. Ask them if you can set up some cameras, and this guy's got to leave eventually, and we can get into the house. I'll give you a key to the house, Flash.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not Flash.
Oh, no, I know. It's your move. Yeah,
so
you're
now
eventually going to leave, aren't you? What's some reason you'd have to leave the house?
Oh, me? Oh, well, I got to get food, I guess.
Okay, good.
I guess I
Did you change
food.
the locks? I forget.
Yeah, of course. Of course I changed the locks.
Okay.
I got a locksmith over there, day 31. I'm a serial squatter.
Of course.
Okay, so I go
You're
out.
going to the grocery store.
Yeah.
Spotted on the camera. Flash says, the damn dirty bum. He left a bedroom window open because it was hot last night, and we're going to crawl in through the window. Don't worry, Flash. You're allowed to do that. I signed you to a renovation lease, and it's not breaking and entering because the window's open. All right, now Flash is digging his heels in.
God, what a also hilarious another loophole. It's just loophole city, the squatter situation.
I can't help myself. I have to be on site. I'm like, Flash, start ripping out these windows. I allow you to renovate. So him and Cam start ripping out windows.
Wow.
That's the renovation lease. So there's no windows, no doors. I want an open concept, Flash. No windows and doors in this joint.
Okay. Well, I come back. I see Flash Shelton rooting around my house.
Laying in your bed.
And I just turn tail and run. And
You're running.
Flash
Really?
Shelton,
Oh, my God.
What could I do with Flash? Well, maybe I go to the house and I say, Flash. I give him my sob story. I'm in the cameras, I get the waterworks going, and, I get Flash to put me up at a hotel. Once Flash Shelton enters the game,
You fold.
That's checkmate to the
my
squatter.
God.
Against a measly homeowner such as yourself, sure, I can last you out. But once you start ripping out the windows and the doors, well, pretty soon, I'm not even going to have a house.
I think
I
I
can't
would
even squat.
I think if I really wanted to dig my heels in, I'd probably just start acting crazy. I'd be like, "Oh, the kitchen's my bathroom now," and just start peeing on everything. I'd try to scare Flash out of there. You know what I mean?
You're not. First off, from the few episodes I've seen, there's nothing that'll scare Flash off. Flash has seen it all, and it's like part of the point. Me, maybe I'm a little bit of a higher standard squatter. I don't want my own defecation where I'm you don't. There's the old expression, you don't shit where you eat.
You're not putting yourself in the mind of a squatter. You're staying too much as John Flynn.
Well, you
here.
told me I was John Flynn.
That's true. I should have told you you're a more debased, debauched version of John Flynn. Alas.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I have some sympathy for the squatters, but look,
you wouldn't want to live in mold and crap on the ground, right?
No.
Look how quick you tapped, though. I mean, you tapped the second Flash showed up. Think of these people who dig their heels in and call the cops on Flash and lock themselves in their room. I mean, it's a losing game.
See, here's the thing. Once Flash enters the situation, you're now on national television. You're on cable TV. You're on the Friendly app. People are looking at you all over the world. This is different from just me versus you, mano y mano.
Sure.
That's what I think is so compelling about Flash and why he's so effective is he has the sort of bully pulpit on his side.
Yes.
He's the hero of the show. I don't want to be a villain. I just want to live in your house. I was sort of framing it in a way where you're victimizing me, et cetera, et cetera. But, once Flash enters the picture, checkmate.
So you tap.
Yeah. He's the queen on the chessboard.
You knocked your.
He's
your
got all the
piece
moves.
Over. Well, if you're listening to this, play along at home. Homeowner versus squatter, an excellent role playing game. We got to market this somehow. Sell some sort of card pack or something.
Yeah.
Before we close today's episode, we are announcing a very brief hiatus. We have done 81 straight episodes of the Flynn Brothers podcast. We have not missed a single week. 81 straight episodes, and it has been a wonderful, wonderful delight. But we are going to take a brief hiatus, twofold. You, John, you're moving back to Sacramento, and I, as we've mentioned many times on the podcast before, I am getting married. And so we are going to take a couple of months off, but we will be back in the fall. Our producer, Will Slade, in tow. You'll have the same crew back together in the fall, better than ever. You'll be living in a new city. I'll be a married man, and Will be out of prison, right? I think you're out of prison. Okay. Yeah. But this is not the end. This is just a brief goodbye until next time. And I think we want to thank all of our loyal listeners who have, make it so worthwhile doing this podcast.
Absolutely. When my brother first proposed that we start a podcast together, I was naturally reticent. I was like, Jim, starting the first podcast that's ever been done? You're a wild man. We're breaking down the door here. But really, I've really appreciated getting to see good buddy Will Slade every week, as well as getting to see my brother. And part of really what I'm looking forward to is we're moving away from each other. We've spent the last 7 years in extremely close proximity. I've probably seen my brother every day pretty much for the last 7 years, which is incredible in a variety of reasons. But one of the things that I'm looking forward to, and one of the things that I've really enjoyed about the podcast, is I have an hour plus or so to dig into something interesting.
Absolutely.
And have a nice conversation with my good buddy.
Absolutely. And so we will continue. We will be back in the fall. It's not goodbye. It's just goodbye for now. But until then, we say, please subscribe, comment, and leave a rating. Send questions, comments, or big idea suggestions to our business email, flynnbrospod@gmail.com. Thank you to our producer, Will Slade. He needs a little break. We've been working him hard. 81 straight episodes. Take a little break, Will Slade. And we'll see you next time on the Flynn Brothers podcast. Take care, buddy.
No, buddy. You take care.